Welcome to How I Ally. I am Lucinda Koza, and I'm joined by my third male guest ever. Would you please introduce yourself and give a little bit of a bio backstory?
Yeah. Glad to be here and grateful to be the third male guest. I feel honored. Yeah, Will Acuff. I am out of Nashville, Tennessee. Been here with my family for the last 18 years. And the highlights of my bio would be that I was coming out of college. I was at night touring in a rock band, playing everywhere from the Apollo in Harlem to the Dallas Hard Rock and everywhere in between. And my claim to fame is I didn't get booed off the Apollo stage.
Good.
Yeah, it was a big deal. And then by day, I was a research analyst in health policy at Duke University. And so I had this weird double life, but was really like the band had become like an ego play for me, right? That's what it was about. And I met this epidemiologist from the University of North Carolina who was an expert in the AIDS pandemic. And he started leading like these Sunday afternoon conversations about global poverty and about the ins and outs and all the different kind of complicated factors that make that what it is. And then he led us on a trip to Nairobi. This would have been in 2002. And we all separated when we got there. So I was staying with a Kenyan family on the edge of one of the worst slums in sub-Saharan Africa. And it was the first time I'd seen anything like the AIDS pandemic up close and personal. And it's a cliche story to say a middle-class white boy has to learn that poverty is real by going to Africa, right? But it's absolutely what happened to me. And coming home from that, it was like my worldview dissolved and I didn't even know I had a worldview. Do you know what I mean? That was the minute I was like, oh my gosh. And coming out of that, it wasn't a straight path, but coming out of that in the years to come, my wife and I started to go, what would it look like to actually get what I would describe as a theology of neighbor? Meaning, how do you actually love neighbors? Not as like a one off thing, but as a daily rhythm of your life. And so 18 years ago, we moved into a historically low income neighborhood and started to do life. And out of that, my wife started working at the men's prison. Tiffany became a former offender job training specialist, helping justice involved neighbors come home. And then we were in their neighborhood, right? And so we just did life together. And they were all kind and patient enough to help me take my foot out of my mouth, learn what I didn't know, right? Like the kindness of proximity. And after about 5 years of that, we launched a nonprofit that was focused on economic opportunity. And since then, our work is about helping underestimated neighbors plan, start, and grow small businesses. And so we've now launched 1,600 plus of these businesses. And last year put 37 million back into the neighborhood economy. Yeah, so that's my day job. And then I also have a new book out about doing life at home with disability. So we could talk about either of those things.
I want to talk about all of it
Yes, I love it.
and how they do this.
Yeah, yeah. They do
Oh,
that
for
all the
audio,
time.
for the
Yeah,
audio, I was interlacing my fingers when I said do this.
yeah. There was a connectivity. Yeah,
Yeah. And how, okay, all right, okay, okay. First of all, that's incredible. That's jaw-droppingly incredible. That number of
yeah. It's been a
six,
wild ride. Yeah.
how do you feel?
I feel like the luckiest person in the world. Like I it has gone so far beyond my wildest dreams. Like when my wife and I were hanging out on our front porch and we were in these conversations with neighbors who had all these amazing passion and skills and drive, but there wasn't like a big enough bridge of opportunity to turn that into something for the marketplace, right?
Yes.
Our initial goal was like, could we launch like 10 businesses? What would that look like? And then, like right now, we have a 3,000 plus person wait list for this program. Like it's
Oh my.
nuts. So, yeah, I feel incredibly grateful to be doing the work that aligns with the purpose of my soul.
That's like the definition of happiness is like when what you do and what you say is
Yes.
aligned with what you want or what you think or what, yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
That's there's this quote I of course cannot I can't even think of who said it, but it's something like the distribution of I'm going to cry. It's like the distribution of talent equal,
Yep.
but the
Yep.
distribution of opportunity is not.
Yeah, that's 100% my experience. Yeah.
Wow. How so when did you have when did you guys have children?
Yeah, Tiffany and I, even in our dating, we talked about wanting to adopt one day. That was part of our kind of foundational ideas about what will it look like to be us. And we chose to adopt our son so he was an infant when we adopted him. And then that whole experience made us go, wait a minute, I think we only want to do adoption. So we ended up adopting twice. So my son is now 13 years old, and he's our child with disabilities, autism, among several other diagnoses, including some rare muscular disease stuff. And then my daughter is typically developing, and she's 9 years old. And we're a very modern and eclectic family here in Nashville. Yeah.
That's lovely.
Yeah.
So I have so many directions I want to go.
Yeah. I'm here
Um,
for it.
oh, okay. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. Okay. I'm going to go this direction. Okay. So when did you, so I'm going to get personal. So how soon in your son's life was he diagnosed or did
Yeah.
you have him evaluated?
Yeah. Yeah. So our journey really first began. He was our first child, and first time parents, you just don't know things, right? There's no way for you to know things, right? I don't care what book you're reading or what like YouTube thing you're watching, right? Being a parent is, as one friend put it, he said, I could try to explain scuba diving to you, but if you've never even been in a pool, you won't really have the frame of reference. And I've always found that a useful idea. And we probably would have known sooner had he been our second child or whatever. But our journey really began where around age 2.5, he stopped sleeping through the night. And not just one or two times, that fuzzy thing that happens with young parents often. But it was days turned to weeks, turned to months, turned to years, multiple sleep studies at Vanderbilt University here in Nashville, surgeries to improve oxygen intake, like all the things. But it didn't change the fact that he was still like up, right? 2 nights out of 10, he'd sleep. But then those other times we were up and engaged. And so that began the journey of diagnosis. And at first it was things like, oh, wait, there might be a cognitive thing here. It's hard to tell. Or there might just be a learning delay. Or there might be a language disorder, sensory processing. Like you go through all the things. And parents who've been on this path know like the diagnostic world is not like a clean, simple checkbox. It is a very messy journey where you're never given like all right, we figured it out and here's the playbook, go do this. It's
Yeah.
much more, you're like, oh, we got a little bit more idea over here and a little bit more over here. And so it was around age 5.5 that we got the official ASD autism diagnosis. And again, since then, like we've continued to get different diagnoses related to other parts of his life and his well-being. And most recently, a couple years ago, glycogen storage disease, which is neuromuscular genetic disease in the rare disease category. So our family has been dynamically affected both by neurodiversity issues and opportunities and
No.
like physical disabilities. Yeah. And it has been both the most wonderfully challenging thing that I could have ever imagined and has been like cannot fathom that I'd be having a life of this much joy if it hadn't happened.
That's so beautiful. Oh, someone that I interviewed recently actually said that joy comes from growth, which comes from stress. So I,
Yeah,
I
I
imagine
think that's
that's,
true.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I used to think that like joy and suffering were mutually exclusive or something. And I don't think that's true. I actually think that there are ways to thrive in the midst of what we're going through rather than waiting for some day where it's all fixed or something. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah, so in our journey, it was not, I don't mean to paint a rosy picture where we figured it out in 2 years or something like that. Not at all. This has been a decade plus of unfolding. And my wife and I, we've consistently hit walls that then showed us that was the moment that we needed to level up our skill set and do more work internally ourselves so we could show up in better health for our kids. And so it
Yes.
became way less about getting, my son treatment and became way more about, oh no, oh, I just touched some trauma in my own life. Huh. Ooh, I need to do the work of healing there so I can show up in a more loving, tender-hearted, whole presence kind of way for my son.
Man, can you give an example?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'll get really practical. And this is like a big part of this is the story of the book, No Elevator to Everest, where I had a framework growing up. And I think this is really common, especially maybe in America, but it's like I learned how to do work out here, like outside of my body.
Right.
There's a problem, solve it. So my
Mm.
whole framework was problem solve. And then at home, my child was not responding to problem solve, right? And then in the face of that, and I have permission from Tiffany, my wife, to talk about this, but in her own trauma journey, she was diagnosed with complex PTSD and had acute clinical depression bouts that would be hard for her to get out of bed. And I had the same, I'm going to problem solve my wife too, right? So now there's
Oh,
two problem solve patterns that, by the way, that is not how relationships work.
yeah.
Like, that's not how humans work. We're meant to be
Right.
known and enjoyed. And so it hit a breaking point where my wife found some really good trauma, a trauma intensive place here outside of Nashville. We
Mm.
call it trauma camp in our family. And she went to
That's
trauma
great.
camp and she came home and I saw like new seeds of hope for her and like a new tool set. And she was like, "You have to go too." And I was like, "Aren't we therapized enough?" was my gut reaction. And never a good sign if you're inventing words to debate your partner. That's a recipe for disaster. But my wife is a badass and she was like, "No, you have to go." And so I went. And day one, I was there with all the arrogance in the world, right? I'm here to get a framework to help fix my wife, right? All that kind of nonsense. But by the end, this place was so good and so skilled that by the end of day two, I was cracked open, like weeping, knowing I was there for me and being taught tools to connect with myself with compassion and curiosity. And it completely changed everything. And then coming home from that, I was going back to a challenging context, right? In a lot of ways, an intense context. And so the question then became, if this was just a mountaintop moment, it'll ultimately be worthless. I need to live this way every day, right? And so I started looking at my own life as a joy lab. Like, how could I create more joy every day? And so you asked like practically how that plays out, right? One thing that I needed to do was create space every morning to connect with myself before I just went about my day. And my son, with the sleep disorder, all the things, there's plenty of reasons not to get up earlier or to try to
Yep.
carve back the sleep. But I said, no, on average, on good days, he's waking up at 5. Okay, I can start to go to bed earlier. I can move a coffee maker to the bedroom. I can set my alarm at 4. I can move a chair next to the window and I can make that cup of coffee, I can sit in that chair, and I can move towards myself with curiosity and compassion by wondering, what am I feeling the most right now? Because when we wake up in the morning, none of us wake up neutral. Like,
Right.
we're already flooded by the thing we saw on the news the night before or the conversation before bed that didn't go how we thought it would go. All that stuff is just like right there. And
Yeah.
most of the time, I would just stuff all that and try to go about my day, right? Or stuff all that and then go try to care and be present with this dynamic kiddo. And it was a recipe for burnout and disaster and emotional
Yes.
disconnection with self. And so, a really practical way was like taking that first 10 minutes of the day to do like what I call an emotional trailhead exercise, which is just like you'd walk a trail into the forest, right? What is the biggest thing I'm feeling right now? And can I move towards it with curiosity and compassion? So, it might be, oh man, we've got that doctor's appointment today. And I'm really worried that they're not going to have an answer for us. And what will that mean? And then as I get curious, that I go, oh, I'm believing that if they don't have an answer, then we're just stuck. And then I'll be able to ask myself, wait a minute, Will, have you talked to every doctor in the universe? No, I actually haven't. Okay, cool. So is it possible that there's another doctor if this one doesn't pan out? You know what? Actually, it is. And I can name and feel the fear and then release it. And then when
Yeah.
my son wakes up, I can move towards him with that processed already versus move towards him with that fear subconsciously running the show. That's a
Yes.
practical example.
That that's such a good example because uh, children with autism, people think there's this misconception that they don't feel as much or
But
that they don't feel empathy, but
it's the opposite.
it's so the opposite.
Big
It's
feelers.
yeah. They are sensitive. They are that's why they can become overstimulated and overwhelmed and because they are so sensitive, they pick up on everything.
Absolutely. Like they I think about it like like I might have one antenna up, you know what I mean? My
Yeah.
son has 25 antenna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're like reaching in places that you can't even see.
Totally. Oh man. Yeah. I can't tell you how many moments we've had like some kind of thing where my son was picking up on a subcurrent, like an emotional subcurrent that he was 100% accurate about, but had not been like named and brought into the room. Yeah,
That's yeah, yes, yes. So that's it becomes so important to process your own or to regulate, to self-regulate.
absolutely. Yeah. And I find most of the time when I'm talking to parents who are faced with some of these unique, again, challenges and opportunities that are on a journey of disability, they're always looking at the kid and they have not yet had that moment of starting to look at themselves. And I find consistently that the minute you're able to turn towards self with a little love and compassion and curiosity, like there can be a paradigm shift that can really change things for families.
That is so important. It's so important.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious, what's your experience? Like, do you find that people are mostly focused on kind of the problem solve kind of thing, and that's the rhythm? Or are you finding more people turning towards self awareness?
I okay, I have found that usually I have found that there's one parent that is taking on the lion's share of all of it, including the self-awareness and the working on oneself and regulating the self, and I don't know if that lets the other parent off the hook somehow.
Ooh, interesting. Now we're into codependent patterns.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right. Exactly.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I do think part of my story is I'm a classic overfunctioner, and learning how to not hero people who aren't asking me to hero them,
Oh,
that's been a big growth thing. But what it actually allows to happen is like other people to really thrive and flourish and take ownership of their own journey. But woo, that's hard work.
because you're stealing it from them in a way. If you're saving them, quote
Yeah.
unquote, you're stealing
Yeah.
their own journey.
Yeah. And I think agency, like believing that, your partner and your child and your fellow person, whoever you're talking to, actually has agency and something beautiful to bring to the table, right? To the city, to the neighborhood, to the family, whatever it is. It might look different than you're expecting or whatever, but that's more about you and your own judgment versus them and their own unique beauty. Yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And I've thought this about my father so many times because he is sick. He has Parkinson's and, in charge of his finances for a while and stuff like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
I really felt like I had to take care of his emotions
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah.
And then I realized, wait a second. He's a grown ass man.
Yes. Oh my gosh. What made you realize that? Was there a moment of awareness?
Yes.
Yeah.
It was like I was af- I was afraid that something was going to hurt his feelings. Like I was afraid to tell him some truth, I he had to move or he something.
Yeah.
I was like horribly terrified of hurting his feelings.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then and then I thought, this is the same man that has been my dad my whole life and went to work every day and drank whiskey in front of the TV at night and
Yeah.
didn't. This is that fucking guy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to hurt his feelings. And even if I do, he can deal with it.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
That was such a huge release of a self-imposed burden.
Yeah. That phrase, self imposed burden, I think it's so, yeah, all of us on some level are carrying out uninvestigated stories.
Yeah.
And I found, at least for me, because through a lot of different rhythms with my own family of origin and everything else, like I learned basically, figure it out, dude. Like you better do all the things and then some if you want to feel safe, right?
Yes.
It meant that I couldn't, I like subconsciously, I couldn't not hero.
Yes.
But after like the healing trauma intensive I did and like some of the work, like the internal work, realizing like, oh no, I need to show up with 100% responsibility for my own physical, spiritual, and emotional well-being and allow others to have 100% responsibility for theirs. So it's not 50-50 and we're negotiating a percentage. That's how I used to do life. It's 100,
Right.
100, right?
Yes.
And that changed how Tiffany and I parent. So practical example, and I'm using, there's a great thing that the drama triangle, it's a tool I love where it's like hero, victim, villain, right? And sometimes we run the bases in those three roles in our relationships. And like me as the hero, I come home, say after work, and Let's say my son's having a hard time and my wife's trying to help get him regulated, right? In the past, I would have just jumped in, taken over for her, and tried to like insert myself into the situation. And then she'd get mad, right? And she would play the villain role. Will, why did you do that, right? And then I'd go from hero to victim. Why won't you let me help you? You don't understand. I'm just trying to help you. And then she might run to hero and try to make me feel better. And just like in this subconscious pattern all the time. And after all this, I might come into the same scenario, but I see this moment for Tiffany and I'll go to her as a fellow grown ass adult, right? And I'll say, hey, could I be helpful right now? And she gets to say, yes, actually, would you jump in? Or, you know what, I'm good. Hey, would you go check on our daughter who's in her room? Or, everybody's fine. This is just life. This will take me 10, 15 minutes. Would you please go start dinner? And it's a
Yeah.
completely different rhythm.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to say we get it right all the time, but we
Mm.
get it right a whole lot more now that we even know it was there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That's great. That is great.
It is really helpful.
Yeah. Wow. So I wonder how much that shows up with your son, because obviously, hopefully, you and your wife won't be around at some point, and he will. And that's something that we have to think about and prepare for. And I don't
Yeah.
know, in the some kind of, you want them to be as independent as possible, yet because of being on the spectrum, it's, oh God, it's just, I don't, what was my question originally? My God. Oh, just about letting someone have 100% accountability
Yeah.
for themselves.
Yeah.
What do you think? What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Like how to walk with my son with that kind of mindset.
Right.
Yeah.
Knowing that, like, well, yeah, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think first is like, I fundamentally believe our job as parents, right, is like we were all of us given this incredible blessing, right? But it's like somebody gave you a seed and you don't know what it's going to grow into, right? You have to stay dialed in and connected enough to know what this particular seed is needing and growing into, right? What does it look like to nurture this? And you
Right.
might be like, oh, I think it's actually going to be a redwood. And then, oh, just kidding. It's a Japanese maple. These need different things. I need to pay
Right.
attention. And we can do a lot of damage if we keep going down the path of, oh, this is a redwood and I will only
Mm.
do this. That kind of rigidity in parenting, I think, is a recipe for disaster. And with kids on the spectrum, 10 times more. And so as I think about like this, what I really want to understand is who is my son right now? Right? What is he most excited about it in the world?
Mm.
Where is his growth edge? Right? Like a couple months ago, his growth edge was like all of a sudden like a switch flipped and he wanted to finally learn how to tie his shoes. Like he had never, like any other time that I tried to teach that, he'd basically show me in a lot of different ways that he did not want
Yeah.
to learn that. Do you know what I mean? And I was like, cool. I don't think this will hurt you not knowing how to do this right now. And so I was willing to be patient in that context. And now he knows how to tie his shoes and he's good at it and he loves it. You know what I mean? And now he has 100% responsibility over that. You know what I mean? There's other things like whether it's learning how to, hey, we're going to learn about washing clothes and we're going to learn about some hygiene stuff and like whatever else we're doing. I'm trying to stay in tune with where he is in the mixture of his ability, his desire, and the growth edge of where he's actually at. And it doesn't mean I'm going to get that right all the time, but if I'm in that frame set,
Yeah.
then it gives us a really healthy approach.
Yeah. And that is true of all children. What you were saying, I was thinking like, yeah, that sounds for how to parent in general.
Yeah. Yeah, I have found that command and control is just not a great way to do family.
Oh God. I've never tried it. I don't even think I
Yeah.
could.
No, I don't mean like me. I have tried it. I was the recipient of it at various
Ah,
points in my life. Yeah. And
wow,
as someone
yeah.
who does not like to be commanded and controlled, what does it look like to, yeah, to raise a little human? And it doesn't mean, obviously, there's things we do command for. Hey, don't run out in the street. Okay, cool. We're learning these parameters. But a lot of the time, it's not in that life or death framework, but we still bring life or death energy to it,
Oh
you
my
know?
gosh. That's yes. Oh man. That's so true. And that is so damaging and just like stressful. Just not it and it doesn't have to be that way. Oh
No,
my God.
it does not. Yeah.
Okay. We've gone over time, of course.
Yeah. This has been
Uh
wonderful.
yeah. Yes. This has been incredible.
Thank you. It's so enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah. I'm so glad that you are writing a book or have written a book.
Yeah, the book is out. You can get it on
Oh,
Amazon right now. Yeah.
get it on Amazon right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. No elevator to Everest. And it's all about how to shift from survive to thrive,
Oh,
even if you're in a challenging context.
that's so needed, especially in this moment.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people are hurting right now.
And why? Why? We don't need it.
No. No. It would be amazing if like we had a national chill out movement. If everyone's, yo, we're gonna take the next 4 years, we're just gonna chill. We're gonna lower the intensity. We're all gonna get more sleep. It's gonna be
Yeah.
great. Let's do that.
Yeah. Oh, man. That's why you have to keep going and doing the work that you're doing, and you have to. And
Thank
you
you.
would anyway, but you have
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. No, it has been the corner to corner work. That's the name of our nonprofit. It has been such an incredible journey. And what we're working on next is launching 10,000 of these underestimated entrepreneurs in and around Nashville, and then working on a national platform to bring it to every city in America. So, yeah,
Hell yeah.
because at the end of the day, so much of our poverty alleviation work puts like an extra $2 into somebody's salary or
Mm,
wages. But like when you're living in a city, like an extra 3 grand in the family budget is not something you're gonna feel. You're gonna be like, the price of eggs alone ate that up. You know what I mean? And an adjustment in my rent.
right.
Whereas if you learn the tools of creating a business that you own, right? Like then you have infinite upside. Instead of waiting for somebody else to be like, here's $2. Like we have graduates who, sorry, last little story. I know we're over time, but we had a school teacher here in Nashville, right? She's poured out her life for the kids in our city. And as she's looking to send her own son to college, she's like, where's that money going to come from? And so she came to her corner to launch a solopreneur, right? Like a side hustle using the recipes she learned as a little girl in her grandma's kitchen,
Oh
right?
my gosh.
And if you hear her tell these stories of being a 6 year old and tying on the first apron and all this, you're like crying and also hungry the way she describes this food. And her goal was $10,000 in year one. 3,000 of overhead, $7,000 to start this college savings fund. That's a real bump into that savings.
Yeah.
And by the end of the year, I found out from our team that she'd done over 36,000.
Stop it.
And I called her. I was like, what? 10K to 36K? What was the story? And she said, I heard that TSU, like one of our historically black colleges here in Nashville, Tennessee State University, she was like, I heard that they were looking for a new caterer for their marching band. And this is like a Grammy Award winning marching band that has 9,000 different types of drums, right? Like, it's a big
Oh,
group of people.
man.
And she used her marketing budget to cater for free. And she took her grandma's caramel crumble cake, right? Like
No.
her most delicious dish,
Oh,
and she walked it up to the band director, waited for him to taste it. And when his eyes were wide with how good this thing was, she said, I heard you're looking for a new caterer. And she closed the deal. And then, and we see this story over and over again. I'm on the phone with her. She's telling me this story. And I was like, amazing. Like, way to grow, like, way to crush it, right? And she goes, Will,
yeah.
I'm just getting started. And I was like, oh, what do you want to do next? And she goes, hey, do you guys think you could get me a pitch meeting at one of our area's big grocery store chains for their regional buyer? And I was like, heck yeah, let's figure it out. And we just had that pitch meeting.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like when people have the tools to thrive, they thrive. That's what happens.
Yes.
And so this is, yeah, it's just seeing neighbors kick ass like they can when given the opportunity.
And to connect it back to autism or sensory processing disorder or all that family of things, it's the I keep hearing people say we all thrive in the right circumstances.
Yep, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, and you have to, as a parent, be listening enough to what your child's trying to tell you.
Yes. Yeah.
To create that environment. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast.
Yeah, it has. It really has. Thank you so much. I'm gonna stop recording now.
Awesome.